indeed is a big problem in this country. When you go to other countries like in Hong Kong, the Lee Kuan Yew, when Lee Kuan Yew took over, he came with a change of the culture of that particular country. And he came up with a project of housing, Mr. Speaker. You'll agree with me. So I think we need to do more of culture change as opposed to the issue of penalties. And also the issue of investigations. That's where the problem is in this country. And you're calling upon the EACC, the ethics and anti-corruption. I know we've changed the leadership there. We have Major Mubarak, but you have to see how much he has done. We've been told they've done so much as far as asset recovery is concerned. But when it comes to investigations, the people who are doing the investigations, I think need to be trained more, as opposed to more of talks without action. If the investigation has been done well, evidence has been given in the courts, it won't be a problem. We need a proper empirical study to be told how many people have been convicted. In this country, we have enough laws that can govern and help us to fight against corruption. But the issue is enforcement. Where is the problem? But I know very well when it comes to matters of the culture, that's where the problem is. Mr. Speaker, recently the Kimwarer and Aror Dam. Kimwarer, His Excellency the President, has closed the shop. Why? We are told the project is not viable. We are told the price was exaggerated. Who did the exaggeration? It's the people in leadership. This is where the problem is. It's not the common Mwananchi Wanjiku down here who goes and do the costing. We've seen in NYS, when they were supplying cotton, they were supplying pens. Something that was costing 10 shillings, it was being costed 1,000 shillings. That is where the corruption is. It is institutionalized. And for us to fight corruption, we must look for ways of deinstitutionalizing. It's already even operationalized, Mr. Speaker. Even when it comes to kids going to schools, Form 1, Form 2 admissions, people want kitu-kidogo everywhere. How do we fight this culture? Maybe it's the highest time the church should come in, because the responsibility of the church is to help us.
Order, Honorable Malwa. What intervention, Honorable Ono? What is it?
Yes, Honorable Chairman. Sorry, Honorable Speaker. I want to caution my brother Wamalwa.
He's out of order.
Kirmuarer should not be brought in here because it's a matter currently in court. And the people of Keio South, where I represent, are at the moment preparing an appeal to the president because we still feel it was irregular to have cancelled the project. And we are still hurting, Honorable Speaker, and we are in pain for the cancellation of that project, Honorable Speaker.
You know, you cautioned Honorable Amara not to speak to it because this is in court, but you went ahead to some significant length to speak to it as well. But of course, the sentiments around that, we don't want to get into it. Honorable Amara seems to have been sufficiently informed. Honorable Amara, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honorable member is my friend, and on a matter of sub judice, which is in our standing orders, it will be nice for him to familiarize himself so that he understands what it means when you talk of sub judice. Because in my pronouncement, Mr. Speaker, I didn't go into the issues of merits, and that's why the sub judice is all about. Maybe it's a first time, he has a long way to learn, so that next time he knows what it is. But when you talk about the issue of Camarel, it's in the public domain. It was a task force which was put in place by His Excellency the President, and His Excellency the President, out of that task force, he discontinued, they cancelled the Camarel. And the reasons that were given in Camarel Dam is because the pricing had been exaggerated. So it's in the public domain, and I sympathize and empathize with the people of Elgeyo Marakwet, who are my neighbors, of course, on this matter. But that's why we're talking about the issue of corruption, how it's been institutionalized. It's in the institutions. Even in this parliament, it is there, we've had it. So the issue is not in the penalties. This is what I'm trying to put across. And Honorable Dindi Nyoro, when it comes to the committee of the whole house, we should see how we can do the amendments. I don't think the problem is to do with the penalties. But the problem has been more when it comes to the issues of investigations. Otherwise, we support this bill. We are together in this. Corruption is everywhere. It is in the counties, but the challenge is not in the penalties. I thank you.
We shall have Honorable Gitonga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to contribute to this bill, first and foremost with a reservation as regards the proposed penalties. Inasmuch as the bill is timely, it is one that we need to debate on, it is one that we need to improve on, and where necessary we make amendments that would suit our circumstances. We must ensure that the law this House passes is a law that is in consonance with our legislative system in the country and also what happens in other countries, especially that subscribe to the Commonwealth form of legislation. The principles on sentencing are such that the court is given a discretion. And this is the reason why we have, before sentencing, there is mitigation. You must always plead to the court to say exactly what made you commit the offense for which you've been convicted of, and what you have to say in terms of seeking leniency to that particular offense. Was arrested with rolls of bang, taken to court, and she pleaded guilty because she had the bang, which is a drug, psychotropic. And the magistrate gave her 10 years in prison. And there was a hue and a cry in the country as to whether this judge had exercised his mind properly. And the judge's answer to the hue and the cry was this: I'm sorry, my hands are tied. I cannot give you anything less than 10 years. Law Society of Kenya took the matter to the High Court. Judges of the High Court sat over it, reversed the sentence with a declaration that the penalty was actually illegal, unconstitutional, because it had taken away the discretion of the magistrate. And for that reason, I oppose the bit that says it has to be a minimum of 1 million shillings and a minimum of whatever number of years you have to go to prison. Let us amend this, absolutely, and let's have stiffer penalties, but we must always leave room for the judge, for the magistrate, for the trial court that is hearing the matter to exercise that discretion. We must also leave room for mitigation, because I've always wondered, in the capital offenses, crimes in Kenya, which include murder, treason, robbery with violence, etc., whatever, if there is any other, is there room for mitigation? Because once you are convicted of murder, do you ever mitigate so that you get a lesser sentence? Because the sentence is a mandatory death sentence, and you cannot mitigate on that. You cannot get anything lesser. You cannot get it commuted unless through parole or the presidential clemency avenue. I don't think we want to go this way. I think the right way for us to go is let us make the penalties stiffer. We may say the fine will not be more than 1 billion shillings. 1 billion means we have accommodated everybody, including any police officer who takes 50 shillings on the roadside, is convicted and fined 100 shillings or 1,000 shillings. And that other fellow who has been convicted of corruption of 500 million, we still have room to tell him to pay a fine of 1 billion, etc., etc. So with those reasons, my position is that this bill is very timely. It is one that we must all agree to. However, I oppose the process of sentencing. That is where we are going wrong, because we must give our courts discretion. We must always allow the courts to listen to mitigation, because no offense in this world is not capable of mitigation of one form or another. There are possibly compelling reasons why the crime is committed and the reasons why the judge should exercise the discretion and be lenient in the circumstances of the case. With those remarks, I state my position. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. We shall have Honorable Mwashako, member for Udanyi.
Mheshimiwa Spika, nashukuru kwa nafasi hii. Nami nasimama kuunga mkono mswada huu ulioletwa na mwenzetu Mheshimiwa Nyoro kuwa ufisadi ama hukumu na faini inayotolewa kwa wafisadi ipate kuongezeka maradufu. Mheshimiwa Spika, kila mara tunapokaa katika nyumba hii na kutaja ama kuongea masuala ya ufisadi, nafikiri nchi nzima huwa sana inatuangazia sisi kama viongozi. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha sana kuwa nchi hii ambayo inajulikana katika Afrika na ulimwengu mzima kuwa ni nchi ambayo inastawi, lakini sana sana tunajulikana kwa masuala ya ufisadi. Tukipawa vile viwango vya ufisadi ama tukipowekwa katika jedwali katika nchi za Afrika, tunaonekana kwamba Kenya imestawi sana na mambo ya ufisadi. Leo hii wakimbiaji wetu kule Doha wanaleta sifa nyingi kwa nchi yetu, lakini vile vile mara nyingine hata wale wakati tunapeleka wakimbiaji kule kukimbia ama kushindana duniani, bado masuala ya ufisadi yanaingia ndani. Tunakumbuka yale yaliyotendeka miaka 2-3 iliyopita wakati tumepeleka timu ya nchi, lakini ufisadi ukaingia sana. Mheshimiwa Spika, leo hii Wakenya wanalia. Wakenya wengi wako katika hali ambayo ya umaskini wa juu sana, kwa sababu wale waliopewa nyadhifa za uongozi miaka ya mbele, kutoka wale wengine walipewa hata urais, lakini kila mmoja kutoka juu mpaka chini, yule askari gongo tunamuita, yule anayechunga mlango wa hospitali, kila mmoja anajitafutia mafanikio kupitia katika njia ya ufisadi. Mheshimiwa Spika, Rais alitangaza vita vikali sana dhidi ya ufisadi. Na wakati walipopatia nyadhifa za kazi mawaziri, tulidhania kwamba mwaka huu ama kipindi hiki cha rais tutaona kweli watu wakihukumiwa. Tulidhania kwamba tutaona watu wakipigwa faini kubwa kubwa ili Wakenya wazidi kuwa na imani kwa ufisadi kweli tunapigana nao. Nadhani kuwa bunge hili sasa limepata nafasi ya kutoa maoni yake kwa uzito kabisa. Na maoni yetu tunatoa kivipi? Kwa kupitia sheria kama hii. Sheria hii ni sheria nzuri, kwa sababu lazima sauti yetu ya kupigana na ufisadi izidi kwenda juu. Na itaenda juu wakati tunasema kwamba ukiiba pesa ya umma, manake wengi wahesabu yanafanywa na mkaguzi wa vitabu wa serikali, tunapatiwa inakuja katika komiti serikali wako nayo. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni vibaya sana kwamba wale wanaopata shida, wanaolala makorokoroni, wale waliofanya makosa, wale waliohukumiwa, wengi ni makosa hivi, ni makosa ambayo yanadhuru pengine mtu mmoja ama wawili, lakini makosa ya jinai, makosa makubwa ni wakati watu wanakufa mahospitalini. Mfano Kenyatta National Hospital, watu wanakufa mahospitalini Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini wale waliopora pesa ya madawa wanapopelekwa kotini, mara nyingi kesi haina aidha ushahidi, ama hata ikipata ushahidi wale wanaohukumiwa ni wale wa chini tu, wale ambao pengine waliingiza kidole katika stakabadhi fulani. Lakini wale mabwenyenye ambao wanafaidi ile pesa ya ufisadi, Mheshimiwa Spika, wengi wako hivi huru tu, hata wengine wako ndani ya bunge. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha sana. Kwa hivyo wakati tunapojadili swala hili kama waheshimiwa, ni vizuri itoke wazi. Hata kama nakubaliana na mheshimiwa aliyesema kwamba tupatie mahakama uhuru wa kuamua ni vipi, kesi iko namna gani, ni jambo nzuri katika sheria, inakaa ni jambo nzuri kweli kabisa. Lakini mahali nchi hii imefika, Mheshimiwa Spika, tunajua ufisadi unaotendeka hata ndani ya mahakama. Sasa tukizidi kupatia wahukumu wetu kwamba nafasi ya kwamba wao ndo wanaamua atakayefungwa miaka 10 ni nani, atakayefungwa mwaka mmoja ni nani, bado ufisadi utaingia maeneo yale. Ndio kwa sababu tunakubaliana na hoja hii ama na sheria hii kwamba wacha mambo ya ufisadi. Maana hata kwa mahakama iko, wacha tutoe hiyo kizungu wanaita discretion. Wacha tuseme kama bunge, ukipatikana umeiba rudisha mara 2 na ufungwe miaka isiyopungua miaka 10, kwa sababu vizazi vinavyokuwa, Mheshimiwa Spika, vitatuhukumu vibaya sana. Maana hawatapata kitu katika nchi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi Jumapili kumetendeka kisa kibaya sana pale feri Mombasa. Kwa kusema ukweli, kama si ufisadi, hakuna vile wananchi maelfu na maelfu wanavuka katika kivuko kile. Lakini kunakosekana hata diver mmoja. Mpiga mbizi mmoja tu anakosekana ndani ya feri. Mpiga mbizi ambaye atakana aangalie angalau wakati kumetendeka jambo kama lile. Mama yule na mtoto wake wamepoteza maisha, si kwa sababu ya nini? Ni ufisadi, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kama si ufisadi, yule mama hangekufa. Manake wale wanaosimamia feri wamejitwika jukumu la kuangalia makontrakti tu, kutafuta njia ya kula pesa, na mara wanatengeza feri, mara feri inatengezwa, lakini hakuna feri inatengezwa vizuri. Feri inakosa miundo msingi ya muhimu ya kulinda maisha ya mwanadamu, kwa sababu watu waliamua kukula pesa ama kufuja pesa ya serikali. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo hili ni nzito. Jambo hili ni jambo ambalo kama viongozi tuchukue nafasi yetu, tupitishe mswada huu, kwa sababu Wakenya wanaumia. Wakenya wanapoteza maisha kila kukicha. Mheshimiwa Spika, asante kwa fursa hii. Nasimama kwa vikali sana kuunga mkono sheria hii ambayo imependekezwa na Mheshimiwa Ndindi Nyoro. Asante.
Honorable Obo Mohamed.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipatia nafasi hii. Mimi ningependa kumuunga mkono Mheshimiwa Ndindi Nyoro kwa hoja hii. Bwana Spika, ni hakika kwamba ufisadi unamaliza nchi yetu ya Kenya. Ufisadi unasababisha maendeleo mengi yasifanyike katika nchi yetu ya Kenya tunayoipenda. Maendeleo mengi ambayo yaweza kufanyika nikasaidia walala hoi hayafanyiki kwa sababu ya ufisadi. Bwana Spika, nchi yetu ya Kenya inaonesha ina nguvu, maana waporaji wanapora kweli kweli na nchi bado imesimama. Lakini njia hii tunayoenda, kama hatuchukui mikakati mizuri ya kupunguza au ya kuondosha ufisadi, basi nchi itasambaratika. Bwana Spika, mimi nataka niongee kidogo kuhusu Lamu ufisadi. Bwana Spika, ni muhimu kaunti kama ya Lamu, serikali au vitengo vile vinaangalia ufisadi, iangalie Lamu County vizuri. Kwa sababu kaunti yetu ni iliyotengwa na hatutaki iwe imetengwa siku zote, au tujiite kaunti iliyotengwa siku zote. Na sisi nataka ufike wakati tuseme na sisi kaunti zingine zije ziangalie Lamu kimaendeleo. Bwana Spika, na waomba wanahusika waimulike Lamu vizuri. Pesa zinaingia. Kuna pesa ya CDF, kuna pesa ya NGAF, kuna pesa inaingia kwa county, kuna pesa ile inaitwa equalization fund. Pesa hizo lau zitachungwa vizuri, basi hizi county ambazo tunahesabu kwamba zimetengwa zitakuwa tena hakuna tena hiyo jina la kusema tumetengwa. Bwana Spika, matatizo mengi Lamu tunayopata ni kwa sababu ya ufisadi. Na kila tatizo nalolitaja Kenya halikosekani Lamu. Lau shirika linahusika au wale wanahusika wataangalia ufisadi, tuna hakika tutasonga mbele sana. Bwana Spika, utashangaa na inashangaza. Sisi tuna hii pesa ya basari ambayo inapitia mikononi ya sisi pia wabunge. Lakini ukashangaa pesa hii wale wanyonge hawapati. Bwana Spika, utashangaa pengine mtoto amemaliza shule ya msingi au amemaliza atakwenda secondary atafuta pesa, na pesa nyingi zinazokwenda kwa county au kwa kila eneo bunge. Au amepata, kuna mwingine amepata, yeye ndo amepata alama ya C+, ndio huyo wa kwenda university peke yake, bado turudi kwenye kufanya michango na pesa nyingi zinaenda, kisha tunakaa hapa tukizungumza ufisadi. Mmoja peke yake kwa eneo bunge apate alama hiyo kisha aenda kafanywe mchango. Mimi najua hapa tukisema itauma, lakini ni ukweli uchungu. Sisi pia hapa lazima tuangalie wale wanyonge. Sio kwa sababu manake saa nyingine hii system ya Kenya inafanya sisi wabunge tuangalie pahali kwenye kura nyingi. Pengine huyu mnyonge hana kura nyingi kwao, akose ile nafasi ya basari. Bwana Spika, tumefanya michango mpaka tuendelea kuchanga tu. Na michango hii inatusababisha hata wengine pengine watafute njia ambazo si za kawaida kutafuta pesa kwa sababu ya michango. Na michango yenyewe ni hii mambo za basari, mambo ya ugonjwa, mambo mengine mengi. Bwana Spika, ingekuwa hata pengine ni vizuri pesa hii ya basari iende tu kwa shule za upili, iwe wanafunzi wote wanasoma bure kwa shule ya upili. Lakini wengi wetu hapa tukiambiwa jambo kama hilo watakataa. Lakini shida ziko, na shida ni hizi system ndio zinasababisha shida hizi. Bwana Spika, utashangaa katika wabunge hawa kuna wabunge au wabunge sisi hapa, kuna wabunge sehemu zingine mambo yanafanyika. Unashangaa madarasa pengine kwa mwaka mmoja mtu amejenga madarasa 40. Na ukiangalia sehemu zingine hakuna, pengine madarasa yakizidi ni 4. Au wengine bado wanasoma chini ya miti au wanakalia mawe. Kenya hii yetu. Bwana Spika, tunawaomba wale auditors wapitie, au ethic and corruption wapitie kila sehemu, wawe na bidii zaidi, wapitie ndio waokoe Kenya. Manake pesa ziko, pesa zafika, lakini mtasikia tu bado shida ziko pale pale, miaka ingia miaka toka, shida ni hizo hizo. Bwana Spika, kuna mfano pesa equalization, utasikia barabara imetolewa pesa ya barabara. Pengine kama kwetu Lamu East imetolewa pesa ya barabara 98 million. Na ukiangalia barabara hiyo badala kupigwa na mvua tu kidogo barabara imeenda. Sasa tutamlaumu Rais Uhuru. Kila manake hapa tutasikia Kenya kila pahali tukenda Rais Uhuru, divers Rais Uhuru, hivi Rais Uhuru. Kwa nini na wale viongozi pia wasichukue hayo majukumu? Au hawa watu ambao wahusika wa anti corruption, wao ndio wasababisha rais akalaumiwa. Wakifanya kazi vizuri kila pahali kukingara, rais hatolaumiwa. Bwana Spika, Lamu tatizo zaidi ni upande pia wa mihadharati. Upande wa mihadharati sababu pia ni corruption au ufisadi. Ufisadi unachangia pakubwa. Maana yake ukiangalia zile road blocks kutoka Malindi mpaka Lamu, kuna zaidi zile za permanent ambao ziko hapo siku zote, zile ziko zaidi ya 10. Na kuna zile za kutokeza kwa njia, zile ziko nyingi. Lakini utaona mihadharati inapita, watoto wanatumia Lamu mihadharati. Hii yote imesababishwa na haya mambo ya ufisadi. Bwana Spika, ardhi kuna changamoto sana, lakini ni matumaini yetu kwamba ile tume tuliochagua itafanya kazi vizuri. Na tamaa ikizidi ndio inaleta hayo matatizo. Kama sahihi Lamu kuna pimwa, Bwana Spika. Lamu kuna pimwa, utasikia watu wametoka kila nchi au kila county wanakuja Lamu kupimiwa. Zile ardhi za Lamu zina wenyewe kabila zote zilioko Lamu, wale wa Lamu wana haki ni zao. Lakini wale mnaokuja mmetiririka kama migration kutoka county zote kuja Lamu, mjue zile county ni yetu ya Lamu na zile ardhi zina wenyewe. Hiyo mtachangia ufisadi na hatutakubali. Bwana Spika, elimu kila nikizungumza mimi sitokosa kuitaja wadi ya Basuba. Bwana Spika, hii inaonesha pia inachangiwa na ufisadi. Bwana Spika, tumeona ile shule iliyoanguka. Serikali yote imeenda hapo Dagoreti. Shule imeanguka, watu wameenda kutetea. Lakini Lamu mpaka sasa miaka 5 shule za Basuba wodi zimefungwa. Na hatujaona serikali ikishuka ikisema hapa ni muhimu. CS akaenda huko, waziri na wengine wote wakaona kwamba hii muhimu. Nani ataamini hapa kama hii Kenya kuna shule miaka 5 haijafunguliwa? Basuba ward miaka 5 shule hazijafunguliwa na hatuoni. Na sio kwamba hatufanyi bidii. Tumepitia kila ukienda, nimeuliza swali bungeni. Sahihi niko kwa nimefanya petition. Sorry. Asante. Bwana Spika, ikiangaliwa vizuri ufisadi, elimu pia itakuwa mzuri Kenya nzima. Bwana Spika, tukizungumza mambo ya Likoni Ferry. Hii Likoni Ferry, yale matatizo ambayo yameonekana, tatizo lile limekuwa dunia nzima wameona sisi udhaifu wetu. Bwana Spika, tatizo hili pia linasababishwa na ufisadi. Ufisadi kivipi? Kuna vijana mahodari wa kuzamia baharini, lakini vijana wale hawachukuliwi. Kama kwa mfano Kizingitini, sisi twajua mahodari kina nani, lakini mtawauliza stakabadhi, wataulizwa stakabadhi. Kakiulizwa stakabadhi hawana. Kuna vijana kama Captain Badi. Ikitokea tatizo Lamu, mimi nawapongeza sana Lamu. Lamu hatungojei kwingine, mambo ngapi yametokea na wao wenyewe wanazamia, hawaogopi, wanaenda kusaidia. Lakini vibali ndio hawana. Sasa system ndio zinaharibika. Kina Athman Madi wanajulikana, ukitaja tu madivers Lamu wanajulikana Kizingitini, wana divers wazuri. Lakini kwa kiserikali watataka mastakabadhi. Wao hawana. Lakini nakupongeza Wizara ya Elimu kwa jambo moja, kwamba sahihi wanataka kutumia zile skills ambao pengine zitasaidia watu.
Your space is gone. What is the intervention for? Honorable Abdi Yusuf.
I just want to get your attention.
No. Honorable Abdi, you are not going to get my attention that way. You will catch the speaker's eye through registering interest, and I can tell what position you are in that rota. I'm sure that will be sorted by the clerks here. Honorable Jaldesa, are you trying to catch the speaker's attention again through the intervention, or what is the intervention for?
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to contribute to this motion.
Please, you will not use the intervention route. You shall use the other normal route. And I shall follow this rota that I have here. And now, it is a space and time for Honorable Mutua Barasa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this bill. And I also want to really thank the Honorable Ndili Nyoro for coming up with this bill, because the intention is really very good. This country is losing a lot of money in the form of corruption. But, Honorable Speaker, we should ask ourselves one question, sir. The amount of money that this country is losing is always increasing, despite the efforts by government agencies to fight corruption. Instead of corruption going down, it's increasing every day. Is it because the penalty is very low? I don't think so, Honorable Speaker. They say in English that prevention is better than cure. What the police do, what the EACC do, is just to implement one of the elements of fighting corruption being taking the people who are involved to court. But I have every reason to believe, Honorable Speaker, that the overall fight against corruption lies in the hands of accounting officers. What accounting officers should do, Honorable Speaker, is that after investigations has been carried out, and it's clear on the route that the thieves, that the corrupt used to siphon money, the accounting officers should go back to the offices, review their systems to close down the loopholes that the corrupt people could have used to siphon money, Honorable Speaker. I am a believer that the formula, the ways and the means that people used to steal money in NYS 1, those people may have used the same means and ways, again, to steal money from government through NYS 2. And if we will have an NYS 3, I still believe that those people will use the same formula. So what is important is the accounting officers to do what we call system audit, to be assisted by the investigative reports in identifying where the loopholes are, identifying areas with risks, and mitigate, Honorable Speaker, by way of improving the procurement procedures, by way of improving the audit procedures, because arresting people and taking them to court is not going to stop corruption in this country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. What will stop corruption in this country is not the penalties. Is sabotaging me.
Yeah, the system seems to...
You should add me some more minutes, Honorable Speaker.
You get your space, Honorable Mutua. Your minutes will be preserved.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what I'm saying is that there must be 2 reports that will come out after corruption-related cases had been reported. We have one report that will clearly show who is to blame and who is to be taken to court. But we must have another report, Honorable Speaker, that I may call a root cause analysis report that will identify the areas where the pilferage took place, where the loopholes in the system that these people are using to siphon money, and you come up with the corrective actions. So that we would want to see a scenario where this House is reviewing policies, is reviewing procedures that are emanating from investigation reports to block the loopholes that the people are using to siphon money, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, like when I said when I was beginning this, my contribution to this bill, is that we must look into our IFMIS procedures. We must look into our procurement procedures. We must look into our audit procedures. There are situations and scenarios, Honorable Speaker, where the Auditor General has given a particular state corporation a clean bill of health as far as audit is concerned, Honorable Speaker, but later on, after some time, you realize that the same people are under EACC investigations. So when privileges has happened, when this country loses money, Honorable Speaker, as a country, we must be able to come up with a report that will assist this country prevent reoccurrence of such vices, again, Honorable Speaker, going forward. And this can only be possible if the identified loopholes are closed. If we have flaws in the procurement system, those flaws should be mitigated against the review of the procurement system. If we have flaws in our IFMIS system, Honorable Speaker, then we must review our IFMIS systems reprogram our IFMI systems to be able to prevent those loopholes, Honorable Speaker. If somebody breaks into my house and steals from my house, I'll move around. If there is any loophole in my fence, if the fence is not very high, Honorable Speaker, I will review and increase the height of my fence. If the doors were made from materials that can easily be broken into, be cut into, then I should reinforce those particular materials that were used to make my doors and my windows, Honorable Speaker. This is exactly what should happen wherever this country loses money, Honorable Speaker. And we need also to look at, to give the EACC prosecutory powers. Because if, as a body that has a responsibility to fight corruption in this country, will be convinced that a particular government officer is corrupt, but again, they are relying on another agency to review their report and take those people in court, Honorable Speaker. We should give them prosecutory powers, such that if they are convinced that a particular individual is corrupt, he has siphoned taxpayers' money, Honorable Speaker, they should be able to take that person to court, Honorable Speaker. Because I know that some of their efforts to fight corruption has been fought by the corruption cartels, Honorable Speaker. I don't think that what this bill proposes to be a fine of 1 million is going to deter corrupt individuals in this country, Honorable Speaker. We know very well that we have people who have stolen millions of shillings, 300 million. So if you are just going to make it very easy that you take me to court and I pay a fine of 1 million, this is not enough to deter people from stealing from government, Honorable Speaker. What is important is a complete system audit, identifying areas with risks, areas with loopholes, and review our systems to prevent or to provide early warning signs so that immediately money is lost, the system is able to detect. The people who are in charge of various sections are able to detect that we have an element of invoices being falsified. We have an element of people planning to pay for services that were never rendered so that they can be prevented before the money is lost, Honorable Speaker. This country must invest in preventing corruption other than spending too much money, Honorable Speaker, in prosecuting those who are found to have stolen money, Honorable Speaker. Because I know very well, Honorable Speaker, that we have been told every time that DPP is pursuing money that particular individuals or particular institutions have stolen. But at the end of the day, it's not clear as to whether the money that was stolen had been recovered or not, Honorable Speaker. We must also come up with a formula as a people of this country that we are able to audit and know that this amount of money had been recovered, this amount of assets had been recovered from this particular period of time, and this is how this amount of money had been spent, Honorable Speaker, to avoid a scenario where some agencies recover the money, recover the assets, and again, these money and assets are embezzled and they don't assist the people of this country. With this, Honorable Speaker, I support, but I'm waiting for the Committee of the Whole House to bring in amendments to make this bill better than it is, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
Shall we have Honorable Tum?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I take this opportunity to thank Honorable Nyoro for bringing this motion. Corruption is a cancer. It is eating the fabric of this society. At Independence, Honorable Speaker, we said we are going to kill illiteracy, poverty, and disease. But because of corruption, we don't have medicines in our hospitals. The schools are in pathetic conditions. The children do not have books. Honorable Speaker, at independence, we were at par with Singapore and Malaysia. So it beats logic why we are not a second, we are not in a middle-income country. Honorable Speaker, in Kenya, we have intelligent men and women. We have innovative men and women. We are hardworking, and money is stolen anyhowly in our institutions. Honorable Speaker, there is a lot of misuse of resources in our institutions. Those people who have been employed, some of them do not come to their places of work. And that is a form of corruption because you earn what you do not sweat for. Honorable Speaker, the need in our country are denied services. That is why in hospitals, you are told to buy medicine. And here, Honorable Speaker, we budget for every department and every institution. Even sometimes you find the government, which is medicine, which is labeled government of Kenya, is being sold in the corridors. So we have to kill corruption in this nation. Honorable Speaker, our farmers are about to get their bonuses. I come from a tea growing county. But Honorable Speaker, in Rift Valley, we are told we are to get 14 shillings. And in other areas like Central, they are getting 36. So Honorable Speaker, we don't know what is happening. There are people who are benefiting from the farmers. A farmer will use a lot of money, but they'll get peanuts. So we have to kill this menace, which is corruption. Honorable Speaker, many people are dying because of sicknesses and diseases. Members of Parliament, every day you are invited for 20 rambles, but we cannot make. And the government has budgeted for the hospitals and what have you. We have impassable roads, and yet the government have released money. Honorable Speaker, we have to kill this cancer in our nation so that we'll move to the middle income country. There is no reason why we are not like South Africa and other countries, because there is a lot of money in Kenya, and Kenyans are waking up at 5 and they sleep at 11 p.m., but there is nothing to show. Kenyans are crying, Kenyans are dying, Kenyans are praying for a nation which will be free of corruption. Honorable Speaker, thank you.
Shall we have Honorable Otiende Amolo?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose this proposed bill amending the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act. Mr. Speaker, the first point is I have perused and read the report by JLAC on this proposal, and I note the observations that the proposal would be a violation of the rights of an accused person, and on page 13, they proceed to cite a decision of the Supreme Court. Mr. Speaker, that is the correct position. If this bill is passed, it would be a violation of the Constitution. Article 50, sub-article 2, Mr. Speaker, gives every accused person at paragraph P the benefit of the least severe of prescribed punishments. The idea of prescribing mandatory minimum sentences as proposed here would not only violate Article 50, sub-article 2, but also Article 25C. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the bill proposes to remove what we call judicial discretion. Every judicial official is entitled, considering the facts and the circumstances, to determine the appropriate sentence. if you prescribe a mandatory minimum sentence as this proposes, it then takes away that discretion. Yet that is a constitutional discretion under Article 159 of the Constitution. Under that article, judicial authority resides only in the judiciary. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that there is also the space for what we call plea bargaining. That space derives directly from the Constitution in Article 159(2)(c), which allows what we call alternative dispute resolution methods. This is an avenue that has been used not just in this country, but in many other countries. Sometimes when you find yourself in a situation where we find ourselves, where corruption is so severe and a lot of money is out there, you come to a reasonable term and say, if you've stolen 100 million, just bring 95 million, we will allow you 5 million only. That has been done in other countries. It can be done in this country. With this kind of prescription, you take away that avenue of plea bargaining. Plea bargaining is sometimes necessary, and it is one that we cannot purport to take away as this bill wants to do. But beyond that, Mr. Speaker, we need to caution ourselves as members of Parliament. When we want to amend this part, we must look at the parent act. What does it deal with? It's not just Article 48. The parent act starts from Article 32 to Section 32 to Section 47. Now, we must remember that when you look at the parent act, Section 42, conflict of interest is actually punishable under this section. Conflict of interest. We must ask ourselves, do we want to prescribe a minimum sentence of 1 million and 10 years for conflict of interest? How many of us here have suffered that conflict of interest? How many of us here have dealt in our CDF in situations of conflict of interest? Indeed, Mr. Speaker, even in voting in this House, when a member stands and says we will vote for so-and-so because she or he is a former member of Parliament, is that not conflict of interest? If we were to look carefully, we might find that many of us in this House would be guilty under Section 42 for conflict of interest. And we must remember then that this is the sentence that we would be recommending for ourselves, including in recent discussions we've had in this House, even yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I think that we must also caution ourselves in terms of how we want to deal with corruption. Is the problem of corruption one of law or one of social ills? Our problem, Mr. Speaker, is that we have made peace with corruption as a country. We tolerate corruption, and it is a social ill, yet we think that we can solve it by the law. Every time issues of corruption are brought, even issues of integrity, we sweep them under the carpet. Mr. Speaker, even in this House, we are guilty of that. When reports are brought and they have questions of integrity, then we say we do not have to speak to them. But when now it comes to the law of corruption, we say there's so much corruption, enhance the law. This is not a question of the law. This is a question of our own heart, of our own approach, and our toleration of corruption. As long as we tolerate corruption, we can change this sentence to 100 years, but it will continue. Mr. Speaker, I think that we must focus on how to address our tolerance of corruption and how to enforce the law as it is. Let us ask ourselves, right now the law prescribes up to 10 years. How many people have been convicted and even sentenced to 5 years, 6 years, or even 9 or 10 years before we make 10 years the mandatory? If you count, you will count so many people who have been called to record statements, some have been presented in court, but those convicted are very few. Our issue is enforcement. There are many countries that don't even have specialized legislation on corruption, but their tolerance of corruption is 0%. So the issue is not the law. Mr. Speaker, I think there's also a conceptual problem in terms of how we handle corruption. We started by establishing an anti-corruption body by administrative fiat. Then we went to a statutory body. Then we went to a constitutional body, which is what EACC now is. But we abandoned that constitutional body because we decided it was not working, and we have now focused the war on corruption through the DCI, which is not even constitutional, which is not even statutory. And so we are in this dilemma of having a whole regime of anti-corruption laws and bodies, but going back traditionally to where we started from, of enforcing anti-corruption through the police. And even those who we have appointed to the EACC, we have conceptually been unclear. Initially they were full-time, then they were made part-time, then they are now also full-time. We have been unclear in the number of commissioners. Should they be 7? Should they be 9? Should they be 3? We are unsure on the role of the CEO. Is it the chairman who controls the body, or is it the CEO? We have a whole conceptual and confusion around that area. I want to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that what we need to do is to focus on eradicating corruption at 2 levels. One is at the level and the stage of elections. As long as the system of elections we have invites the usage of a lot of money, it will always invite corruption on the part of those who are elected. Because every election cycle is a cycle of usage of hordes and hordes of money. And it means we must examine that system that requires you to have a lot of money in order to be elected. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest that the reduction of corruption will not depend for appointed officers on how severe the sentences are on the book. It must depend on the intolerance of corruption by the appointing authority. When the president has a whiff that any minister, any PS, any high-ranking official who is appointed through his office is corrupt, he does not need to await for the court to convict that person to remove them from office, because he has the ability to remove them for any reason or for no reason. And as long as we have situations where we are waiting for people to be taken to court to be convicted before they can be removed from office, then we will only have appointed officers who become smarter but remain corrupt. I want to submit, Mr. Speaker, that we do not need to change the law in order not to tolerate corruption. This is not a matter of preaching of how much you abhor corruption. This is a matter of law, and as a matter of law, this bill would be unconstitutional. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Dr. Amolo, very well spoken. And take note, of course, the recent Supreme Court decision in matters where mandatory sentences were imposed on robbery with violence convicts. And that has been reversed. And we are now going to have a situation where all those who are convicted mandatorily to death, that those sentences must be rethought by the sentencing court. So I think you have spoken very well, and I hope that when this comes to third reading, you will have opportunity to sit with the Honorable Ndindi, who has put in a lot of work in this also, and you can see what he's tried to do, so that we come up with a law that will stand up to the test of the courts, the Constitutional Court. We shall have the Honorable Mwirigi Paul, member for Igembe South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to contribute onto this bill. Mr. Speaker, corruption has contributed to a lot of negative impacts to the Kenyan citizens, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the working of the system, the working of the government, Mr. Speaker, in this country is propelled by corruption, whereby you cannot get any service from any public entity without giving something for you to get assistance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, the working in our hospitals, some of the recruited doctors, Mr. Speaker, who do operation in hospitals, Mr. Speaker, most of them, Mr. Speaker, some are recruited through the way of corruption, Mr. Speaker. whereby you give something without having any qualification, and you are recruited to do that job, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, in our education sector, Mr. Speaker, the way our teachers are working, Mr. Speaker, most of the work which is being done there, Mr. Speaker, you have to pay something so that your kid can be retained in school. You have to pay something so that your children or your kid, Mr. Speaker, can be retained in school. The working of our systems, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of laxity, Mr. Speaker, when when you are being admitted, or when the service which you require from a certain public officer office, Mr. Speaker, the service which you are given, Mr. Speaker, it is not given as fast as you would like it to be given to you, Mr. Speaker, but you have to give something so that you can get the attention of the officer who is going to give you that service, Mr. Speaker, which you require. So it is the right time, Mr. Speaker, we be serious when executing this bill, Mr. Speaker. And it will help many Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, who are of goodwill, Mr. Speaker, and even it will assist to get the genuine people who will be working in the public offices, Mr. Speaker. So it is good for us, Mr. Speaker, we be serious when executing this rule, Mr. Speaker, whereby the people or the officers who are caught, Mr. Speaker, exercising corruption in their various places of working, Mr. Speaker, be it the traffic officers, Mr. Speaker, because they are the ones who normally exercise this in broad daylight, Mr. Speaker, without fearing anything, because there is nothing which is being, or there is no action which is being taken upon them, Mr. Speaker. When this rule or this law, Mr. Speaker, will be put in place, it will help us to curb the corruption, Mr. Speaker. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, it is good for us to improve the system, Mr. Speaker. For us to end the impunity, Mr. Speaker, we must have a strong legal framework and which cannot be compromised, Mr. Speaker. Because in most of our court, Mr. Speaker, which we expect, Mr. Speaker, to exercise the independence, Mr. Speaker, when executing or when executing, Mr. Speaker, their mandate, they are the ones, Mr. Speaker, which are compromised by those people who are engaged in corruption. So it is good for the government to make it clear for these bodies so that they can have their independence during exercising of their mandate. Because, Mr. Speaker, when a court or when a judge is compromised, Mr. Speaker, we expect no positive result when giving the justice or when executing the verdict of the person who has committed corruption, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the transparency should be there also, so that the Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, can have a clear access to the information, and this will be achieved through empowering the auditing agencies, Mr. Speaker, which do audit of the report, Mr. Speaker, whereby the citizens, Mr. Speaker, will have the clear information of what is happening the way the budget is being made. The Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, or the audit agencies, Mr. Speaker, will work alongside with the citizens, Mr. Speaker, by updating them how that process takes place, and the citizens, Mr. Speaker, will be in a good position to hold the government accountable, Mr. Speaker. Freedom to the press also, Mr. Speaker, this is something which we should, or which cannot be avoided. Since press, Mr. Speaker, they are the people who are at the limelight of the citizens, who can update the citizens what is happening, and it is good for this country also. When we are fighting this corruption, Mr. Speaker, it is important to give the press the high chance to be informing the people about the happenings of activities which are being taken or carried out by the government, Mr. Speaker. Also, the reforming of the administration, Mr. Speaker, because for many years, Mr. Speaker, the people who are charged with the corruption, Mr. Speaker, are the same people who we are promoting to hold the offices. So it is good for the reforms to be done in these offices, whereby the people who are involved in corruption, Mr. Speaker, they are not allowed to own any public office until, Mr. Speaker, the convictions which they are convicted with are out, or they are cleared, Mr. Speaker, for them to own these offices. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support this bill. Thank you.
Honorable Murige, very well spoken. But what happens in the case where some of these people with very clear cases come to the house, and we think as a house that they should hold these positions? The Honorable Menza Mbogo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to echo my voice on this important bill on the anti-corruption amendment bill. Mr. Speaker, corruption is not new. Corruption has been there, and it will be there. But we need to ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, where does this corruption start? We as parents, we are fully responsible, because today, when you send your kid to a shop, when he hesitates or she hesitates, you always bribe him. You tell your kid, just go buy for me this, and 20 shillings is for you. Already, we are poisoning the mind of that child. Because for her or for him, she knows that for her to be able to deliver anything or to do anything, she must be paid something for her to do what is required. So, Mr. Speaker, we need a paradigm shift. We need a culture change. And this needs to be introduced from the ECD levels, all the way up. Otherwise, whatever we do here, whatever laws that we want to change, it will still not help this country. The other day, we had a lot of arrests were happening in this country after the president became so vocal, and the DCI was given the mandate to be arresting people on Fridays, taken to a police cell. You spend 2 nights in a police cell. On a Monday, you're taken to court. But Kenyans are so smart. We adapt to these situations. I know that I'll be picked on a Friday. I prepare my lawyers with the money that I've gotten, the ill-gotten money. And on Monday, when I'm presented before the court of law, my lawyers are there to bail me out. And we've had so many arrests that were done. Governors were arrested. They were told to step aside. Principal secretaries, CSS. But what has happened to them? We've never seen serious convictions happen in this country. If I recall very well, I think there is only one conviction that was done for the former managing director of Kenya Tourist Board. I don't remember his name, but I think he was sentenced for 1 year or 2 years, and I think that is the only major conviction that was done. So, Mr. Speaker, corruption, it has to be fought from all angles. We support the president fully. We are behind him, but
the Honorable Mbogo, that you must be speaking to the Honorable, to Dr. Ongonga.
Yes.
Ochieng.
I forgot the name, but that is the only serious arrest for a state officer that was done. I don't remember any other. The rest are still, many cases that are still pending before the courts of law, but no major sentencing or conviction that has been done. So, Mr. Speaker, when we look at corruption, a good example, we've had all the speakers here saying about 30% of our budget is stolen. If our budget is around 2 trillion today, when you talk of 30%, we are looking at 600 billion per year. For the number of years that will be in this parliament, you are looking at what? 3 trillion. Just disappeared through the thin air. And that money is within this country. That money is here. And I want to fully support what our legal expert, Dr. What was his name? Amolo. What he said, we need to adopt to this alternative dispute mechanism, because it is high time now. We need maybe even to give a grace period, to give an amnesty to those who people have stolen the money, to return this money and develop this country, because this money is stashed all over the world and is not helping this country. But if that money was here today, it will have done wonders. But there should be a mechanism, and it has been done in many jurisdictions in the world, people adopting to that mechanism whereby you agree whatever has been stolen, what needs to be returned to the country, and what will be left to whoever has stolen the money. So it is an option that needs to be considered seriously. Otherwise, this route of going to courts, we will amend these laws every day. We will come up with whatever laws we want to come up with. But at the end of the day, if the investigations are not effective, because what we were told by the Honorable CJ, they will decide or determine a case depending on the evidence that has been put forward by the investigating arm. So if the evidence is weak, what do you expect from the courts? The culprits will just be released and nothing will happen to it. And whatever has been stolen, it will just disappear for good. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm propelling here is we need a culture change. We need a paradigm shift from the way we approach these issues. Yes, I fully support what Honorable Nyiri has come up with. It is a very good proposal. But at the end of the day, even if we say a minimum of 10 years, even what we have now, we've never seen those convictions. And that is what pains me. The other day we were told, kila mtu atabeba msalaba yake mwenyewe. Today, Kenyans are saying, bring that msalaba. I'm ready to carry it. Because they know I'll be taken to court and I will use the same money to bail myself out. And I'll be out there spending this money. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to prepare ourselves, and we need a serious civic education all the way from ECD up. Without that, Mr. Speaker, this country is doomed. This country is very rich, Mr. Speaker. We've been talking about corruption for the last 20 years. If it was a shop, today this shop would have been closed down because of bankruptcy. But look at this country. We are still getting stronger by the day. We just need to get our act right. Today, when you look at a good example, when we are doing roads, and this is one thing that really pains me, Mr. Speaker. You're a member of parliament. We have roads that are being done by the carer, coordinated as the patron. We, members of the parliament, are the patrons of the carer road that we are doing in our own constituency. But just ask yourself, Mr. Speaker, a 200-meter road, to upgrade that road from maybe Maram to Kabro, it costs 5 million shillings. When you do it yourself, Mr. Speaker, because I've done the numbers, it costs you 1.5 million shillings. And when you ask the experts, they tell you, we are using the Japanese costing way of doing roads. Where on earth? We are not in Japan. We are in Kenya. And we have to do things Kenyan way. But it pains me with this kind of money, because with the 5 million that they allocate for a 200-meter road, we can actually get 400-meter road. But at the end of the day, there is that serious collusion between the officials, the engineers, and the contractors. And at the end of the day, we end up with very short work, very small sections of road, and there is no value for money, Mr. Speaker. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I fully support the bill. Thank you.
The Honorable Pukose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this very important bill. Honorable Speaker, on the onset, Honorable Tienda Amolo has indicated that when we pass this bill the way it is, then it's unconstitutional. And Honorable Speaker, you've gone further and given an advice opinion on the recent ruling by the Supreme Court on the same issue. So I can see the desperation of Honorable Tindi Nyoro in terms of how do we address the issue of corruption in this country. And therefore, I think it will be important that we can do some amendments during the committee of the whole House to align this bill such that it is constitutional, so that the efforts that have been put by the honorable member is not efforts in futility. So that because the courts are independent, and like any other arm of the government, they must be seen to do the right thing. And therefore, I think it is very important that I'm hoping that Honorable Tindi Nyoro is in the House to be able to listen to those very important advices that both you, Honorable Speaker, and Honorable Tiendo Amolo, who is a senior counsel, I'm hoping that he's in the list of the members to be senior counsels in this country, have given to this House. And the Honorable Speaker, we normally, for some of us who are ardent listeners and ardent debaters in this House, we listen to very important opinions that can shape in our lawmaking process in this House. So I think those are very critical contributions, Honorable Speaker, that we must be able to make this law to be able to align it with the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, I remember in the last Parliament, there was even attempts by some honorable members to make it, to bring in the issue that somebody should even be hanged when involved in the issues of corruption. And that was because of the laws that we've made in this country, that was declared also to be unconstitutional, and the House rejected on that. So moving forward, Honorable Speaker, issues of corruption must be dealt with according to the law. And we must be able to look at how best we can be able to handle. And I think even our own institutions, the DCI, the DPP, the EACC, must be seen to fight corruption without discrimination. Because when we see the DCC, we see that some other governors are told that you cannot now be able to step into their office when they are being charged, while other governors continue doing their duties as if nothing has happened. Then that becomes selective application of the law. The law, and for the DCI, ASCC, and DPP to be able to assist the president in the fight against corruption, they must apply the law impartially. They must not just be able to look at a few files and say, this is what we can be able to attend to, this one can be hidden under the desk and wait for another time. Any file that appears before the DPP or the DCI must be acted upon, and therefore, because we see so many cases of corruption, Mr. Speaker. We see it in the counties, we see it in every sector in this country, and you can be able to look at and say that in this county, this is what is happening. It's common knowledge that corruption cases are rampant, especially in the counties. But some governors are working scot-free. Some CCs, some chief officers, and officers who are engaged in these corruption activities, Honorable Speaker, they are working scot-free. And we want to make sure that every Kenyan, Honorable Speaker, wherever they are, they must be able to understand that the law is applicable equally among all its citizens. Honorable Speaker, there was a petition in the morning that was presented by the member for Saboti, Honorable Caleb Hamisi. And I want to also join him, Honorable Speaker, because I'm not able to contribute, to say that I support that petition by Honorable Caleb Hamisi on the decassetment of Kitalale settlement scheme, Honorable Speaker, which is occupied 100% by the people of Kitalale. And these people, Honorable Speaker, they have stayed in that land since early 90s up to today. And it's just an example of land where people are living and it's still a forest. But this is where people are staying, and we hope that this House, when that petition is appeared before the Committee on Lands, will be supported, and the House will also be able to support it, to support Honorable Kale Pamisi on the issue of making sure that his constituents get title deeds and they are well resettled. So with those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support.
Well spoken, the Honorable Bukose. There must be certainty in the application of the law. And if one governor is asked to step aside from his office, then the next one, who is charged with similar offenses, must be asked to step aside. So we cannot have two applications of the law. Very well spoken. The Honorable Mishra, you will speak next. The Honorable Yusuf, member for Kamkunji. You seem to be interested in speaking to this, but I cannot find your have you keyed in? Very well. I will give you an opportunity, but your name is not, I think the machines have a problem, but I will see you at an appropriate time. Just hold on. The Honorable Mishra, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, I support this motion, the bill by Honorable Dindi Nyoro, but we have to see the broader picture of this bill. First of all,
the Honorable Tonui, you seem to want to force the hand of the Speaker. But proceed. What is your point of order?
Unfairness which we are facing here, because we have been seated here, many have joined us. I think about 10 or so have spoken.
The Honorable Tonui, you are out of order. You are out of order. You are out of order, the Honorable Tonui. Proceed, the Honorable Mishra.
Thank you, Speaker, sir. Now we should see the broader picture of this bill. First of all, we should find why there is corruption. Kenya has a great history, great heritage in this world, in Africa. Kenya is growing every day with great people, very mature democracy, advanced technology, infrastructure. Kenya is the only country in Africa today has shown mature democracy, from single party to multi-party, from autocracy to democracy. Even the only country in the world, third country, which allowed the rerun of the president. So we have the potential in this world to be developed country, one of the developed country very soon. But having said that, we should also sit down and see why there is corruption. Who is doing corruption? And why it is not stopping? I'll give an example, a scenario. If the police, if the army, if the security agencies, if the intelligence are not well paid, the corrupt cannot be removed and abolished. Number two, when there is a crisis, corruption is a crisis, we have to not play the blame game. We have to manage the crisis, and then after managing the crisis, we have to sit down and see retrospectively what was the problem. Then only it can be an example. We remember the then president of Russia, Stanley, the great Stanley. Once he went to the railway, the train in Moscow, and he himself with security agency pointed out 10 people traveling without ticket. Then only he ordered the shootout order that time, and all 10 people were shut down, gone down. Up till now, Russia has never witnessed to any one passenger without ticket. I'm not saying to gun down our people, but we have to make strong and steep rules to streamline the rules and regulations. But rules and regulations is not to punish people, but to to save, to protect the good people and the good country and the nation as a whole. Now also corruption can be stopped. We have to have our strong foreign policy. I'll tell you one example. Now this international funding happening in our country. People are coming, some country I won't name here, 100 shilling, suppose they are giving 100 shilling. Out of that, 50 shilling is, before we saw, is already gone at higher level. Another 50 shilling, the same country will take part in the tender, in the single tender, no competition. That is the terms and condition is there before funding. Now out of 50 shilling, 30 shilling already the country, the people who are engaged in that contract has taken. What Kenya is getting only 20 shilling against 100 shilling, and the interest rate are very high. So Kenya is suffering a lot, but we have to see today, if somebody is corrupt and caught, I was told he and she is not bothered. Why? It is a style now to be caught as corruption. It is a status. Somebody caught, Friday arrested, Sunday slept in the Saturday and Sunday slept in the cell. Monday he is out. I was told people, the ladies who are caught, they are also going to salons to make their hair, to see, because they will be in the TV. The men who are caught, they are also buying suits also to see how smart they will, so that next election they will be already contesting because they are already in the limelight. So if we don't put these rules and regulations stiff and not monitored and implemented, then we cannot control the corruption. People say politicians are doing corruption. To me, Kenya today, as my colleagues and friends are here, member of parliament and senators, which corruption we are doing? Nothing. Nothing, no corruption we are doing. It is the executives who are doing corruption. We have to change the constitution, because today we are voted by the people of Kenya, and we have to work and we have to do, we know what is the problem. But these executives today, they are with the power and in the implementation role, and without doing any implementation, they are doing corruption. And there is nothing happening because they have to also, the same executives are going to implement the rules and regulations. So we are undone. So now, we have to be self-sufficient as Kenyans to make our youths, to make our future self-sufficient. As how? We don't want to give all this construction work, or suppose one example of construction work. Why? Kenyans are doctors, Kenyans are pilots, Kenyans are engineers. What is preventing us not to do in a mega tender to participate by our Kenyans? We have to make our own laws and rules. These foreigners who are coming for mega corruption, to prevent it, every foreign country companies which are performing in Kenya, there should be 40% minimum partnership of a Kenyan indigenous African, not a Kenyan citizen as a role. I am telling you today, the corruptions started long ago, but now it has reached a point where there is, everybody is corrupt, everybody is wondering, everybody is dreaming to be president. So they know, they think that they make money, billions, and next election they will be the president. There is there is a difference between leadership and politician. A leadership who thinks about next generation, a politician who thinks about next election. So can we think about next generation? Look at those NYS scandal 1 and 2. Those times, those youths, they said, I interviewed 1 or 2, they said we are reduced 10 kilo. Daktari, we reduced 10 kilo after joining NYS. No chakula, no transport, nothing. So please kindly, before I was one day I told you, those people who are doing corruption, please ask their children, can we, your papa and mommy, to go to do corruption tomorrow? Let the children listen what they are saying. So I support this bill strongly, and this should be implemented as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Tonui, it is noteworthy that the system was a little jumbled up, but I am relatively aware of the members who are I will reach you. So do not feel that I am ignoring you. I know the members who are here before the system got jumbled up. I'll get to you. The reason why I mentioned the honorable member for the Honorable Yusuf, he usually gets sympathy from me because of where he has come from. If you know the Honorable Yusuf, you know it is actually an effort for him to get to this house. And when he comes here, it is only fair that he receives some sympathy from the Speaker, if it is possible. And if I can get to him, I'll give him an opportunity also. But the Honorable Tonui, I'll give you an opportunity, but the opportunity now goes to the Honorable Ochieng, then we shall come back to you. The Honorable Ochieng.
Thank you so much.
There's no point of order, the Honorable Kabinga. These are members of parliament. They've been here. Let them speak. It's not only you who can speak. They are members of parliament just like you. And there's only one mic that each one of us can contribute through. The Honorable Kabinga, be kind to other members of parliament also. The Honorable Cheng, proceed.
Thank you so much. Mr. Speaker, I wish to oppose this bill. Mr. Speaker, for information, this bill doesn't deal with punishments for corruptions per se. It indicates the things that this bill deals. This bill deals with inducements, abuse of office, conflict of interest, bid rigging, and conspiracy, those kind of things, Mr. Speaker. And so any insinuations that this particular bill deals with the omnibus punishment for all offenses in the world is not true. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to start by saying that it's been proven that punishment, however severe, however less severe, does not deter corruption. Corruption, Mr. Speaker, has to be fought using different tools. And whereas we know that criminalizing corruption is a good thing, providing for punishment is a good thing, Mr. Speaker, but evidence doesn't show that the higher the punishment, the lower the corruption. Evidence doesn't show that if you put punishment at 100 million, then there will be no corruption. Mr. Speaker, corruption happens because of a couple of things. And so, Mr. Speaker, being a lawyer and based on what the Supreme Court has said, I'm going to advise my friend, the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, to consider revising his bill to say probably not exceeding 10 million. Because the word not less than isn't legal language that's allowed by the courts. It will definitely be shut down. And there's no point of us, Mr. Speaker, doing a law in vain. There's no point of us legislating in vain, because this definitely will not go anywhere. Mr. Speaker, the same section 48 that the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro seeks to amend provides at 48.1b and 48.2 on how else the punishment can be meted. Because you can imagine, if the money lost, if the property lost because of that offense is 10 million or 20 million, then the law allows the courts to give punishment that is beyond 1 million shillings. If you read down them, Mr. Speaker, at 48.2, it says that the punishment thereof could also be based on calculating how much was lost and doubling it. So that if it's 10 million that was lost, then the courts have a chance to order 20 million shillings in terms of punishment. That's what is in the law. And so, purporting to say not less than 1 million shillings, first of all, of course, limits the decision of the courts. But number two, Mr. Speaker, 1 million shillings is not magic. It's a very small amount of money. If you ask me, the best way of punishing crime would be basing it on the quantum of money lost, which 48.1.2 talks about. And so, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to say a couple of things about punishment. One, today, the weakest link, Mr. Speaker, to corruption in this country is this parliament. in my opinion, the weakest link in fighting corruption in this country, because from the time you start budgeting, if you were to go through our budgets, Mr. Speaker, you will find some pork hidden almost everywhere. If you go to the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Roads, there are people putting monies there hoping that this will come back to them. So the weakest link, opinion, Mr. Speaker, is not about punishing by paying $1 million shillings. It's about ensuring that all of us live by the law and say what we mean and mean what we say, Mr. Speaker. This parliament today, if you get to know the kind of gerrymandering that happens, the kind of pussyfooting that happens when you're doing the budget, Mr. Speaker, you'll be shocked. People are following. Have you seen, have they left what we said on the Ministry of Health budget, what we put on the roads? Has it passed? Members are following the monies they have allocated in the budget, see how much they can tender for, how much they can receive. Mr. Speaker, we will not fight corruption by hoping that showing perception, because this is what Ndoni is trying to do, without casting aspersions, to be seen to be fighting corruption. This cannot be a way of hoping to be seen to be fighting corruption, Mr. Speaker. Corruption will be fought based on very solid grounds, Mr. Speaker, and I propose the following. One, Mr. Speaker, is that we must ensure that the bodies we've charged with fighting corruption are not fighting corruption for the show. They're not doing this for the cameras. They're not doing this for the accolades. They're doing this because that is their role. If ESCC arrests somebody or DPP, we should not be, I hear people saying, oh, kudos to DPP. This is their job. They should do it better. They should not expect to be clapped for. If ESCC arrests anybody for corruption, we should not be clapping for them. They should do their job better. I hear people saying, oh, there's no political will. We don't need the president to say something about corruption. We don't need the deputy president or the prime minister, or whoever it is, to say we should now fight corruption. We should have the bodies we've charged and we've given budgets to fight corruption. So you hear people saying, oh, now somebody has called so and so. Mr. Speaker, the day we understand our roles as a Kenyans, that a teacher teaches because that's his role to do, the police officer does what their job is, the judiciary does their job, we should not be expecting to be elated for because we did our job. Number two, Mr. Speaker, we should ensure, Mr. Speaker, that we have zero tolerance for corruption. When we get the budgets of PSC here, members saying, oh, they only stole 2 million. The other ones have sold 7 billion. Corruption is corruption, whether $1 billion shillings has been lost or $1 billion. We are normalizing corruption by saying, oh, he only stole 100,000 shillings. He only stole 100,000 shillings. Other guys have stolen $1 billion or 2 billion. We are making it very easy for everyone else to steal because we based on quantum. This one only stole $1 million, the other one stole $1 billion, so the other one who stole $1 million is actually not corrupt or a lesser corrupt human being. We must push for zero tolerance corruption so that anything small you do that's against the law is punished. Mr. Speaker, a report came out 3 years ago about what the young people think about, first of all, leaders in parliament here today, and generally about life. The reason you hear people use the word hustler nation and feeling nice about it is because it doesn't matter how much you've made it. If you're driving a Range Rover, the young people are saying to them it doesn't matter how you got it. What matters to them is that you're driving a Range Rover. If you're driving a Mercedes Benz, it doesn't matter how you got it. What matters is that you're driving one. The values you've passed on to our children, the values you're passing on to the society are wrong. So hoping, like Ndoni Nyoro hopes that you put higher punishment and then these things goes, it's wrong. We need to put our feet down and say that anything that is wrong, however much the quantum. Mr. Speaker, number 3 is that we must run an open government. The government operates so opaque. We borrow money from the Eurobond. We have to spend 4 or 5 years to explain to us how much the money was, how the money was used. Even our budgets. No member of parliament could tell you how much the money we appropriated here in parliament was used. Because of a lot of red tape, opaqueness, and a lot of secrecy that is not warranted. We in this century should be, because we are now budgeting parliament, we know how 1.8 trillion shillings has been approved by parliament to be used. We should know how much is used to a D, to the last cent, because we deserve it. It's our right as Kenyans. So if we hope to run an open government, Mr. Speaker, this is how we can fight corruption. Mr. Speaker, we've had so many ways of doing this. But every time we take one step forward, we take 7 backwards. How do you explain, for example, and I'm not casting aspersions, but how do you explain even where we go out there and say, this election has been rigged, this election has been stolen, But 2 days later, 3 days later, we hear those who are saying the election has been stolen, shaking hands with those who are claiming have stolen the elections. Anything goes. Anything goes. So what are you teaching our children? This one stole, you claimed it was stolen, the following day you are shaking hands, nothing wrong has happened, we can move on. We can't work that way. We cannot hope to build the values and principles in our constitution by probating and reprobating, by abusing today and praising tomorrow. It's wrong. So we are going to fight corruption, Mr. Speaker, by saying what we mean and meaning what we say and being disciplined and living according to the law. Mr. Speaker, I oppose and will be moving amendments to ensure that this bill proposed by Ndindi Nyoro reflects what this country needs. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
The Honorable Tonui. But before the Honorable Tonui takes to the mic, members allow me to recognize in the presence in the public gallery of members of the committee, Gilgil Constituency Development Fund Committee, members who are in the public gallery from Gilgil, Nakuru County. They are welcome to observe the proceedings of the House. The Honorable Cheng, you have spoken to people who have stolen 1,000, 100,000, 1 million, and all of them being weighed like this and that, through this hand and the other hand. But we are a lawyer, the Honorable Cheng. You know very well that the only way you will call somebody a thief is if he has been convicted by a court of law and he has exhausted all the appellate appeal channels. So the Honorable Cheng, you should be well informed on that. The Honorable Tonui, proceed. The Honorable Kabinga, I have noted that your concern was really that your mic has gone off 3 times. I wish to inform members and apologize to members that the system doesn't seem to be working very well today. So the Honorable Kabinga, your concern is correct. And, but I'm fairly aware of the members who are here, and I think we are taking care of them. The Honorable Tonui, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Baringo, I also take note that you are here. But the Honorable Tonui was here before you. Proceed, the Honorable Tonui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also make my contribution in this bill. I do support the fight against corruption, but certainly I don't support this bill. I don't believe we have shortage of pieces of legislation in fighting corruption. I believe we have adequate. So this one may not add anything much, especially when it's addressing the issue of the jail term, that we need to add the jail term to go beyond 10 years. Why don't we even jail people for that maximum of 10 years first before we adjust it? The issue is simply at the implementation stage, the processing stage in the courts. I believe that is where the issues are. But otherwise, the legislation which we have certainly addresses most of those issues. I know Honorable Sangok, when he seconded, did mention the issue of Mau Trustland, which he called Mau Forest, and as a form of corruption, that connecting power to the people living there, building roads and schools there is a form of corruption. But he didn't address the issue that these people have title deeds from the same government, and the same title deeds are also possessed by those others who are also having deep plantation in forests. In the same Mau forest, there are several deep plantations. There is the ones by Finlay's, who was part of that Mau forest. The one by Unilever is part of that forest. Kiptagich tea estate is part of that forest. When you go through Apatea forest, there is a big tea estate carved inside that forest when you go through it. And who are the owners? You know, we normally discuss squarely while we are taking tea, and then we are saying the mighty in this country cannot be tied. They can grab land anywhere, but we will always concentrate on the small people in the Mau and such. But these same ones will never be tied because they are the mighty. They are the people who have the power to allocate land and allocate to themselves and that's why they allocated themselves even in places which look very awkward. When you carve a tea plantation in the middle of a forest, you know, when even you Google and you see it, we normally laugh as we enjoy tea that these people are too brave to do such a thing. So I believe if we are to fight corruption, there should be no discrimination. There should be, those sacred cows should not be there. We should be able to fight it conclusively, dealing with all of them. Then the issue of tendering process, I believe, is a major activity which contributes to corruption. So long as we don't standardize the works which we do, then there is always going to be corruption. For example, when we are constructing classrooms, personally, under CTF, the maximum I can allocate for a classroom is 500,000, and it's always completed because I don't do tender personally. We do tender in the school, and we tell people, count the number of lorries delivering sand, is it full, all those, and then you will be able to control cost to 500. When it comes to county, 1.2 million. When it comes to the Ministry of Education, a minimum of 1.5 million shillings. And we have the Auditor General who normally audits all of this. Why doesn't he give a report that such and such institution are implementing similar projects at the cost of this, others at the cost of this, so that we can manage the issues of corruption at that level? I don't know why when we follow the tendering process as required, every project, the cost of doing that escalates because there are so many people in that process. Even the graveling of roads, there should be standardized price per kilometer. That way we'll be able to control the issue of the costs. Then I know, because we are always talking about the corrupt, the imagined, and the truly corrupt. I believe when we say we allow the courts to freeze the accounts of those who have been accused, I believe that could also be unfair, because people need also to get access to their resources to defend themselves as they go through the justice system. Because when you don't have resources, you can never get justice in this country. So I don't support that idea of freezing the resources of those people. The major also contributors of corruption in this country, I believe, are those who are in charge of making policy. For example, when we come up with the issue of affordable housing, you know, we discussed casually that this one has vested interests. The major problems which our people are facing in this country certainly is not the issue of affordable housing. What we only need to do is slum upgrading. But the rest of the Kenyans, you can simply build their own houses so long as we subsidize the cost of building materials and such. But when we want to centralize it, we want to create a fund. Of course, everyone knows that this has vested interests. There are people who want to make huge profits from this. But we are quiet because it may not be politically correct to deal with it. So some of this comes from the policy level. How are we making policies? And that contributes to corruption. There is also a big issue, especially in our region, my constituency and Bomet, in generally tea growing regions. That massive drop in prices of tea. I believe we need also to have the government be involved in auditing the systems in KTDA so that we ensure that there is no corruption in KTDA, so that the farmers can be served better. And I believe that can only come, we can achieve that by the government coming in to assist the farmers to audit the processes in the tea factories and also to audit the marketing process so that we reduce the costs of doing business through all those processes in KTDA, and also address this issue of variation. The tea brokers which we have in Mombasa, I don't know if they are not highly partisan, because if we have the tea bonuses for the western side of this country, it is as low as 11 shillings per kg, while those was in the eastern regions is as high as 40 shillings, a difference of 30 shillings. Surely there must be something in these people, the whole of that process of marketing also needs to be addressed so that we can get some sort of fairness. Because I believe even a factory like the one which we have in Lenguruoni, if the tea bonus is 18 shilling and that region is among the highest in terms of attitude, and I believe if the issue of tea is based on attitude, then we need to be having better prices in such regions. So otherwise, I conclude by repeating again that I don't support this piece of legislation. The current pieces of legislation which are there are adequate to address the issues of corruption. Thank you so much.
The Honorable Mizigi Mnene, member for Taita Taveta.
Asante sana Mr. Speaker kwa kunipatia pia mimi fursa ili niweze kujadili hoja hii. Na nitaanza kwa kusema Mr. Speaker kwamba ninaunga mkono hoja hii, na kwa sababu ninaunga mkono ni kwamba ufisadi katika hii nchi yetu ya Kenya umekithiri sana. Na hivyo basi mambo mengi yamekuwa hayaendi ipasavyo. Kuna mambo mengi sana yanakuwa hayaendi vizuri kwa sababu ya hili swala la ufisadi. Masibitali hayana madawa, watu wanakufa hovyo hovyo, na hii ukifuatilia sana unakuta ni maswala tu ya ufisadi. Kuna kisa kimoja kilinishangaza sana cha ufisadi ambacho kilisababisha nikaona kwamba ufisadi umefanya watu wamekuwa wanapenda mali zaidi, hata utu umewatoka. Kulikuwa kuna kisa kimoja ya kwamba driver wa ambulance ameenda kuchukua mgonjwa Mr. Speaker, na alikuwa ni mama ambaye anajifungua, lakini kufika pale akasema kwanza mimi nataka nifungiwe kitu changu kidogo ambacho hakina risiti wala hakijulikani mahali popote, niweke mfukoni na ndiposa tuende. Na ni jambo la huzuni kwamba mama yule tulimpoteza, na yule dereva mimi nilimshughulikia vilivyo kwa sababu nilivyofahamishwa hali hiyo sikufurahi. Lakini hii ni moja ya visa vya ufisadi ambavyo viko katika nchi hii na vinasababisha kwa kweli tunapoteza kama Wakenya, na sisi kama viongozi tunadharaulika sana. Tazama kisa ambacho kinaendelea pale Mombasa Likoni Ferry. Imekuwa siku 3 sasa, hali haieleweki, kumekuwa na mauti pale, na mpaka sasa watu wanakaa katika hali ya sintofahamu. Kuna utepetevu ambao haueleweki, na wengi tukiangalia kwa mtazamo tunaona ni kwamba kuna ufisadi ambao umeendelea pale. Kenya nzima kunakuwa hakuna watu wa kuokoa hali kama hizo. Mr. Speaker, ndio maana mimi naunga mkono swala hili ya kwamba kuwe na hukumu kali ya mambo ya ufisadi. Mr. Speaker, nataka kusema hivi, tumeona watu wengi na majina tajika wamehusishwa na ufisadi.
The Honorable Mizigi, just hold on. The Honorable Ngata, what is out of order?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order 95. Mr. Speaker, when you listen to all those who are supporting this bill, they are supporting the bill. And now we are repeating ourselves, Mr. Speaker. I'm requesting if you can close the bill, the debate, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Ngata, do I hear you to say that we should now call the mover to reply?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, that's what I'm requesting.
Very well. Honorable members, allow me to put the question that the mover be called to reply. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Will as many of that opinion say nay? Nay. The nays have it. Proceed, the Honorable Mizigi.
Asante sana Mr. Speaker. Na nilikuwa naendelea nikisema hivi ya kwamba tumeona wengi watu ambao wamehusishwa wamehusishwa kwa masuala haya ya ufisadi katika nchi hii ya Kenya. Lakini kufikia sasa ni kwamba ni kama hatua inayofaa kuchukuliwa wao haijafanyika, haijatekelezwa. Kwa sababu wengi wao wako huru. Na wengi wao ni watu, ni majina tajika, ni viongozi ambao tunaweza kuwaita kwa Kiingereza role models. Na hii inasababisha hali hii ya ufisadi inaonekana kwamba ni hali ya kawaida. Kunakuwa hakuna hofu kabisa ya mtu kutaka kufanya ufisadi wa hali yoyote. Kwa sababu kama wale ambao wamehusishwa wako huru na waendelea kuishi maisha yao ya kawaida, basi watu wanaona kwamba ufisadi umekuwa ni jambo la kawaida. Kwa hivyo, Mr. Speaker, mimi nasema kwamba ninaunga mkono kwamba hukumu iongezwe na tena hiyo hukumu iweze kufuatiliwa, ya kwamba watu wanapopatikana kwa ufisadi waweze kuhukumiwa ipasavyo. Asante sana kwa fursa hii, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Kipyegon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know time is not on our side, but I just wish to make a simple contribution, Mr. Speaker, on this matter. I wish to state categorically that I oppose this particular bill. And the major reason, Mr. Speaker, is that I think we have enough laws in this country, including the Constitution, that allows corruption to be fought in all corners. Mr. Speaker, the reason why I say that is because if you look at Chapter 6 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, it talks about integrity, it talks about holders of offices, either state officers or public officers. Mr. Speaker, this was a clear indication that the drafters of the Constitution wanted us to fight this corruption in the way or in the manner that is supposed to be fought. But, Mr. Speaker, seemingly nobody is taking serious attention to fighting corruption in this country. I say so, Mr. Speaker, because corruption is like a disease. It has become like a disease. And then it has become like a culture in our country, so that anybody who assumes office believes that this is my time to make money. This is my time to make to make good use of the opportunity I got. Mr. Speaker, and that culture cannot stop until...
The Honorable Kipyegon, I have to call you to order to stop now because it is 1 p.m. You still have 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
You still have 8 minutes when this matter will be set down for debate.
Thank you, Speaker.
The motion itself still has a balance of 28 minutes.
Okay.
When it is next set down, you'll have a priority. Thank you. Honorable members, there's been a lot of interest in this. The Honorable Kabinga and the Honorable Jerusa, the Honorable Member for Nyali, the Honorable Member for Kisumu East, the Honorable Member for Funyula, the Honorable Member for Baringo, and of course the Honorable Yusuf, who always has favor from the Speaker, could not get favor today. But I trust that the next time the matter is set down for consideration, you may have an opportunity. I thank you, members. Honorable members, the time being 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned till today, Wednesday, 2nd October 2019 at 2:30 p.m.